American bombers score 10 additional hits. Musashi feels it this time.
They get bomb hits and torpedo hits on the Musashi that weaken it and slow it down.
When the smoke clears, Musashi is listing to port and struggling to make 15 knots. And the monster warship's troubles are far from over. A few hours later, in mid-afternoon, USS Enterprise pilots get a crack at her. A wave of bombers from both Enterprise and USS Franklin buzzes in, determined to put Musashi beneath the waves.
As our dive bomber and torpedo bomber pilots came in, they could see the fattest target they'd ever seen, and they wanted to take her down.
The bomber pilots hold their dives longer than they normally would have. They press in very close before releasing. The tactic is successful.
Every one of their torpedoes hit, all 8 of them. 11 out of their 18 bombs hit their mark. Both squadrons turn and pull away. The Musashi is stopped, down by the head, and burning.
So the Enterprise Air Group participates in the final destruction of one of the 2 most powerful battleships in the entire world.
Musashi will finally slip beneath the ocean surface shortly after dark, but she has lived up to the estimates of her toughness.
The Americans were absolutely astounded at the amount of damage that she took before she finally rolled over and sank.
The tenacious attacks by American aircraft rattle the Japanese commander, Vice Admiral Takeo Kurita, and he turns his fleet around, if only temporarily. He's been so heavily engaged by wave after wave of American bombers, he attempts to withdraw beyond the range of the U.S. carriers.
To the Americans, it looks as if that force has been beaten off and is going to be retreating.
It leads Admiral Halsey, commanding the 3rd U.S. Fleet, to the conclusion that Kurita has disengaged and is leaving the battle area.
Admiral Halsey believes he is now free to turn the attention of his carrier force elsewhere. But the Admiral's shift of focus is premature.
During the later afternoon, Admiral Kurita then brings his forces about again, and under cover of darkness, brings those forces through the San Bernardino Strait.
But well before the center force reverses course for the second time, scout planes notify Admiral Halsey that Japanese aircraft carriers are approaching from the north. They're headed south toward the Philippines from mainland Japan. The Admiral doesn't know the enemy carriers represent literally an empty threat. He doesn't know they're acting as a decoy, meant to pull him away from the main fight. Admiral William Halsey, whose personal motto is hit hard, hit fast, hit often, takes the bait. Marine anti-aircraft gunner Jack Maroney is a 20-year-old from Texas.
And of course, it was a poorly kept secret that Halsey would like to eliminate every Japanese carrier and he possibly could. And so that makes sense, but he headed north trying to eliminate the Jap fleet.
21-year-old fellow crewman Pedro Sandoval also hails from Texas.
We made a big mistake then because we left the other ships unprotected.
Halsey's action leaves the San Bernardino Strait, the path the Japanese center force will eventually take to Leyte Gulf, unguarded. It could mean the destruction of the entire 7th Fleet. But since the Admiral believes the center force is retreating and that the carriers represent the main threat, he's comfortable with the decision. October 24th, 1944, 10:30 p.m. The Japanese Southern Force, the force attacked by Enterprise planes early this morning, has now churned its way out of the Sulu Sea and into Surigao Strait. Surigao Strait empties into the southern end of Leyte Gulf. But fortunately for American landing forces, this avenue of potential attack is covered. Just beyond the mouth of the strait, under the steady command of Rear Admiral Jesse Oldendorf, are 6 American battleships and 8 Allied cruisers.
So these battleships under Oldendorf's command are not necessarily state-of-the-art. Compared to the new Iowa-class battleships which are now fighting in the Pacific, these are battleships that were sunk or damaged at Pearl Harbor, the Maryland, the California. And fittingly, these ships that the Japanese had tried to put under at Pearl Harbor are now back to fight at Leyte and return the favor.
The refurbished warships are here to both provide beach bombardment for the Leyte landing force, the U.S. 6th Army, and to protect the landing force against naval attack from the south. An attack of the type the Japanese Southern Force hopes to bring in just a matter of hours. But they must first get past Jesse Oldendorf's battleships. And Oldendorf knows they're coming. The Admiral gets an early warning of the enemy's approach. From PT boats he's sent deep into the strait for this purpose. When word of the oncoming Japanese vessels reaches him, Oldendorf immediately deploys his big warships for an epic fight.
So Oldendorf arrays his battleships into a battle line, and he is going to execute a very classic maneuver called crossing the T. The column of enemy ships are going to be intersected by his warships. This way, all of the battleships under Oldendorf's command will be able to fire full broadsides and concentrate their fire on this single column of ships.
It's an ideal defensive position. At 3:51 a.m., radar-controlled guns on the American battleships open fire. Firing from ships on both sides rages for over an hour, but the Americans prevail.
They sink 2 Japanese battleships there, along with a heavy cruiser and a number of destroyers.
The Southern Force commander, Vice Admiral Shoji Nishimura, goes down with his flagship, Yamashiro.
So the Southern pincer is destroyed utterly, without any real accomplishments.
It is the last battle line action in